My fingers were already wrapped around the champagne glass when my grandson suddenly tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, don't drink that." His voice was barely louder than a breath. Around us, the wedding reception sparkled under the warm California sunset. Laughter floated across the terrace, glasses clinked, and my son Michael stood proudly beside his beautiful bride, Vanessa Carter. It was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our family's life, but when I looked down at Noah's face, something inside me turned cold. An 8-year-old should not look that scared. His small hand gripped my sleeve tighter. "Please, Grandma," he whispered again. And in that moment, the champagne in my hand suddenly felt dangerous. If you enjoy emotional stories with twists that slowly unfold, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps these stories reach more people. And I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? What city or country, and what time is it there? Share it in the comments. Now, let me tell you what happened next. For a moment, I didn't move. The champagne glass hovered halfway between the table and my lips, my wrist frozen in place. Around me, the wedding reception continued, as if nothing unusual had happened. Music drifted from the small band near the dance floor. Waiters carried trays of sparkling drinks. Guests laughed beneath strings of glowing lights that stretched across the terrace. But my attention was no longer on the celebration. It was on the small hand gripping my sleeve. I slowly lowered the glass and turned toward my grandson. Noah was 8 years old, thin, curious, and usually far too energetic to stay still for more than 5 seconds. But right now, he looked completely different. His shoulders were tight and his eyes kept darting nervously around the room. "Hey," I said softly, crouching down beside him. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced over my shoulder. I followed his gaze. Across the terrace, Vanessa Carter, my son's new wife, stood beside Michael, greeting guests with a radiant smile. Her long blonde hair caught the sunlight, and the lace of her wedding dress glowed almost white against the ocean behind her. She looked perfect. Everyone had been saying that all day. Perfect bride, perfect wedding, perfect couple. But Noah was still clutching my sleeve. I lowered my voice even more. "Noah," I said gently, "why did you tell me not to drink this?" His eyes dropped to the glass in my hand. Then he leaned closer, so close that his words were almost lost beneath the music. "Because she told me not to say anything." My stomach tightened. "Who told you that he swallowed?" "Vanessa." The name hung in the air between us. I felt a strange chill run through my chest, even though the California afternoon was still warm. "What do you mean she told you not to say anything?" I asked carefully. Noah looked toward the crowd again, as if making sure no one was watching. "I wasn't supposed to hear it," he said quietly. "Hear what?" He hesitated. Children sometimes struggle to explain things they don't fully understand, and the confusion on his face told me he wasn't sure how to describe what he had seen or thought he had seen, but the fear in his voice felt real. "I was in the kitchen," he said slowly, "getting cookies." "There were cookies in the kitchen?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. He nodded, and Vanessa was there too. I felt my fingers tighten around the stem of the champagne glass. What was she doing? Before Noah could answer, a familiar voice suddenly appeared behind us. "Olivia, you haven't had your toast yet." I turned. Vanessa stood only a few feet away. Her smile was warm and effortless, the same charming smile that had won over nearly everyone in our family during the past year. Up close, I could see the delicate sparkle of the earrings she wore, tiny diamonds catching the light. She glanced down at Noah. "Well, hello there," she said brightly. Keeping Grandma company, Noah immediately stepped closer to me. "Yes," he muttered. Vanessa laughed lightly, though there was something quick and sharp in her eyes before the smile returned. "Good," she said. "I was just telling Michael that it's time for the family toast." Her gaze shifted to the champagne glass still in my hand. "You haven't tried the champagne yet," she added. "It's from a vineyard Michael and I visited last spring. It's wonderful." For a moment, I simply looked at her. Everything about her seemed completely natural. Relaxed, confident. If Noah hadn't spoken, I would have thought nothing of it. But his fingers were still gripping my sleeve, and I could feel the tension in his small hand. "Oh," I said lightly, lifting the glass slightly. I was just about to. Vanessa's smile widened. "Well then, I'll leave you to it." She squeezed my arm gently, almost affectionately, and then turned back toward the crowd, her white dress moving gracefully through the guests. I watched her go. Only when she disappeared among the tables did I look back at Noah. "Okay," I whispered. "Tell me what you saw." He exhaled slowly as if he had been holding his breath the entire time Vanessa was standing there. "She was in the kitchen," he repeated, "and she had your glass. My glass." He nodded. I saw her take it from the tray. A faint pulse began beating in my temples. "What did she do with it?" Noah frowned, concentrating. "She opened a little bottle," he said. "What kind of bottle, I don't know. It was small." His hands moved as he spoke, trying to show me the size. "Like medicine." "Yeah," he said quickly. "Like medicine. And then she poured something in your glass." The terrace suddenly felt louder. The band began playing a new song and several guests started clapping near the dance floor, but the sounds seemed far away. "Did she see you watching?" I asked. Noah shook his head. I was behind the door. "What happened after that?" "She said something." "What did she say?" He hesitated again. "I think she was talking to someone on the phone." "And what did you hear?" Noah's brow furrowed as he tried to remember. "I don't know all the words," he said, "but I heard her say, 'This will make things easier.'" The sentence sent a sudden wave of unease through me. Easier for what I asked quietly. "I don't know." He looked up at me again, his eyes wide, but when she came out of the kitchen, she told me not to tell anyone I saw her. "What exactly did she say?" He swallowed. "She said that drink is special for Grandma, okay. Don't tell anyone." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I looked down at the champagne glass in my hand. The bubbles rose slowly to the surface. Nothing about it looked unusual. Nothing about it smelled strange, and yet the weight of it now felt very different. Noah tugged my sleeve again. "Grandma." "Yes, are you going to drink it?" I forced a small smile. "No," I said gently. His shoulders relaxed just a little. "Good." I glanced across the terrace once more. Vanessa stood beside Michael again, her arm linked through his, greeting another group of guests. She laughed at something someone said, tilting her head back slightly. From a distance, she looked like the picture of happiness, like the perfect new member of our family. But the words Noah had just told me kept repeating in my mind. "This will make things easier." I slowly lowered the glass. "Stay here with me for a moment," I told Noah. He nodded. "Okay." I stood up and looked toward the hallway that led to the restrooms inside the hotel. "I'm just going to step inside for a minute," I said. "With the drink?" Noah asked. "Yes." He looked relieved. "Good." I gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze and began walking toward the building. Behind me, the music swelled and laughter continued. The wedding celebration was in full swing. But as I pushed open the door leading into the quiet hallway, I felt something tightening in my chest. Because for the first time that day, I realized something. Either my grandson had misunderstood what he saw, or someone had just tried to trick me into drinking something I never should have touched. And I was about to find out which one it was. The hallway inside the hotel was quiet. The music from the reception outside faded the moment the door closed behind me, leaving only the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant clink of dishes from somewhere deeper in the building. For the first time all afternoon, I was alone, and the champagne glass was still in my hand. I walked slowly toward the restroom, my heels clicking softly against the polished tile floor. The mirror lights inside the ladies' room were bright, almost clinical, reflecting off the marble counters and pale walls. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. For a moment I just stood there. The glass trembled slightly in my hand. "All right, Olivia," I murmured to myself. "Let's see." I placed the champagne on the counter and leaned closer. The bubbles were still rising lazily to the surface, perfectly normal at first glance. Pale gold, sparkling, elegant. Exactly the kind of champagne you would expect at an expensive wedding in Santa Barbara. Nothing about it looked suspicious, but Noah's face kept flashing in my mind, the fear in his eyes. Children could misunderstand things. That was true. An 8-year-old might see something simple and imagine something frightening, but Noah wasn't a dramatic child. If anything, he was thoughtful, sometimes overly cautious. And the way he had grabbed my sleeve, that hadn't felt like imagination. I picked up the glass and brought it closer to my nose. The scent was faintly sweet. Champagne citrus, maybe a hint of pear. Nothing strange. Still, something about the situation made my chest feel tight. I hesitated, then dipped my finger into the liquid. A tiny drop clung to my fingertip. Slowly, cautiously, I touched it to the tip of my tongue. The taste appeared normal at first, but then a faint bitterness, so subtle that most people probably wouldn't notice it beneath the dryness of the champagne. I pulled my hand away immediately. My heart gave a small, uneasy thump. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the wine itself, but the bitterness lingered longer than I expected. I turned toward the sink and rinsed my finger quickly under cold water. As the water ran, my reflection stared back at me in the mirror. 68 years old, short silver hair carefully styled for the wedding, a pale blue dress Michael had helped me choose months ago. My late husband used to say I had the calm face of someone who had solved too many problems in her lifetime. Right now, though, my calm face looked uneasy. Don't jump to conclusions, I whispered to myself. But memories began rising one after another. Moments I had brushed aside before. Moments that suddenly felt different. Vanessa entering our lives almost a year ago. Michael meeting her through a marketing firm his company hired. The speed of their relationship. 8 months from first date to engagement. At the time, I had simply been happy for him. Michael was 42 and had spent most of his adult life working. After his divorce from Noah's mother years ago, he had never seemed eager to date again. Then Vanessa appeared. Beautiful, confident, charming. Within weeks, she seemed to understand Michael better than anyone. Within months, she had won over most of the family. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She asked thoughtful questions. She brought flowers when she visited. She even insisted on helping me organize old family photographs one Sunday afternoon. Everyone adored her. Everyone except me. Not that I disliked her, but something about her always felt a little too polished, a little too perfect. I remembered one particular evening 3 months ago. Vanessa and Michael had come to my house for dinner. The conversation had started casually enough weather work travel plans. But eventually, Vanessa had asked about my home. "This place must be worth quite a lot now," she had said lightly while looking around the living room. Santa Barbara real estate was expensive. That was no secret. Still, the question had felt oddly specific. "Oh, I suppose it's appreciated over the years," I had replied. She had smiled. "And do you still manage all your investments yourself?" Michael had laughed. "Vanessa, you sound like a financial advisor." She had waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, I'm just curious." At the time, I had assumed she was simply making conversation. But now, standing in the quiet restroom with the champagne glass on the counter, the memory felt different. Another memory surfaced. 2 weeks ago. Vanessa and I had been reviewing the wedding seating chart. Out of nowhere, she had asked, "Have you ever considered letting Michael help manage your finances someday?" The question had surprised me. "I've managed them for 40 years, I had said. She had smiled again, soft, gentle. "Of course. I just meant when things get harder. Harder." I remembered the word clearly. At the time, I had laughed it off, but now I wasn't so sure. I looked back down at the champagne glass. The pale gold liquid shimmered beneath the lights. No visible difference. No sign of anything unusual. Yet Noah had said he saw Vanessa pour something into it, and I had tasted bitterness. My pulse began to quicken. I needed to know, not guess. Know. Carefully, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. There was one person I trusted who might be able to help. Dr. Samuel Harris. Samuel had been a close friend of my late husband for decades, a toxicology specialist who had spent years working with hospital laboratories. Even in retirement, he occasionally consulted for local clinics. If anyone could tell me whether something had been added to the champagne, it would be him. I scrolled through my contacts until his name appeared. My thumb hovered over the call button. Was I overreacting? Possibly. But if Noah was right, if someone had placed something in this drink, then ignoring it would be foolish. I pressed the call button. The phone rang twice. Then Samuel answered. "Olivia," he said, sounding mildly surprised. "Everything all right, Samuel?" I said quietly. "I need a small favor." "Oh, I'm at Michael's wedding. Well, congratulations." "Thank you," I replied. Then I lowered my voice. "But I may have a problem." There was a pause on the other end. What kind of problem? I looked down at the champagne glass again. My grandson believes someone may have put something in my drink. Silence. Then Samuel spoke again, his tone suddenly much more serious. Do you still have the drink? Yes. Don't touch it anymore. I won't. Can you bring it to me? I think so. I'm only 15 minutes away, he said. Bring the glass exactly as it is. All right. And Olivia. Yes, if someone actually put something in that drink. His voice trailed off for a moment. Then you did the right thing by calling. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my purse. For a few seconds, I simply stood there listening to my own breathing. Then I carefully picked up the champagne glass again. I wrapped a napkin around the stem, trying not to disturb the liquid. When I stepped back into the hallway, the distant sound of music drifted toward me again. The reception outside was still full of laughter, still full of celebration. But as I walked toward the exit that led to the parking lot, I felt something else growing quietly inside me, a sense that this beautiful wedding day might be hiding something far darker beneath its perfect surface. And somewhere behind me on the terrace, Vanessa Carter was probably still smiling. The late afternoon sun was beginning to sink toward the ocean as I stepped out into the hotel parking lot. From outside, the wedding reception looked almost magical. Soft music drifted through the open terrace doors. Guests were gathered around small cocktail tables, their laughter carried by the breeze from the Pacific. Strings of warm lights glowed above them like tiny stars, and waiters moved gracefully through the crowd with trays of sparkling glasses. It looked like the kind of wedding people dreamed about. But the champagne glass wrapped carefully in a napkin in my hand felt like a secret. I walked slowly to my car, trying not to attract attention. The last thing I wanted was for anyone, especially Vanessa, to see me leaving with the drink. When I reached the driver's door, I glanced back toward the terrace. For a moment, I saw her. Vanessa stood beside Michael near the edge of the reception area, greeting a group of guests who had just arrived. Her posture was relaxed, elegant. She laughed at something someone said, touching Michael's arm lightly as she spoke. She looked radiant, exactly the kind of bride people whispered about for years afterward. I forced myself to look away. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Noah had misinterpreted something. Maybe the bitterness I tasted had been nothing more than a dry note in the champagne. But my instincts told me otherwise. I opened the car door and carefully placed the glass in the cup holder. Then I got in and started the engine. Dr. Samuel Harris lived only 15 minutes away, just as he had said. His house sat on a quiet hillside overlooking Santa Barbara, the same house he and his wife had lived in for nearly 30 years. The drive there felt strangely longer than usual. My mind kept replaying Noah's words. She opened a little bottle. She poured something in your glass. This will make things easier. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. What could that possibly mean? The road curved along the hillside, giving brief glimpses of the ocean glowing under the fading sun. Normally, I loved this drive. My husband and I had taken it countless times when we first moved to Santa Barbara decades ago. Today, though, the beauty of the view barely registered. All I could think about was the glass beside me and Vanessa's smile. By the time I reached Samuel's driveway, the sky had begun turning pale orange. His porch light flicked on as I pulled up. Samuel opened the front door before I even reached the steps. He was in his early 70s now, tall and thin with silver hair and the same sharp eyes he'd always had. Olivia, he said, greeting me with a concerned look. You sounded serious on the phone. I'm sorry to drag you into this on a Saturday evening. Nonsense, he replied. Come in. I stepped inside and held out the glass wrapped in the napkin. This is it. Samuel took the glass, carefully holding it by the base. Did you drink any of it? He asked. No, just a drop on my finger. Did you swallow number good? He carried the glass into his kitchen and placed it on the counter under a bright overhead light. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Samuel leaned closer to the glass, studying the liquid. Champagne, he asked. Yes. He tilted his head slightly. Did it taste unusual? A little bitter. He nodded slowly. That could mean something or nothing. I figured you'd say that. Samuel smiled faintly. I'm a scientist, Olivia. We try not to jump to conclusions. He reached for a small testing kit from a cabinet. Even in retirement, he kept basic equipment for quick analyses. This won't give us a full lab report, he explained, but it may tell us if anything obvious is present. He poured a tiny sample of the champagne into a small glass vial. "Where exactly did you get this?" he asked while working. Vanessa handed it to me during the reception. Vanessa is Michael's new wife. "Yes, and you think she might have put something in the drink, I don't know," I admitted. "But my grandson says he saw her pour something into it." Samuel paused. "How old is your grandson? 8? He looked thoughtful for a moment. "Children can be observant," he said. "Yes," I replied quietly. "That's what worries me." Samuel began running the quick test. A few drops of reagent fell into the sample. The clear liquid turned faintly cloudy. He frowned slightly. "That's interesting." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means there may indeed be something dissolved in the drink. What kind of something, I'm not sure yet." He ran another test, another drop, another reaction. Samuel's expression grew more serious. After a moment, he looked up at me. "Olivia, I'm fairly certain this contains a benzodiazepine." I blinked. "What a sedative," he explained. "Medications in that family are often used for anxiety or sleep, like sleeping pills." "Similar." "Yes." My chest tightened. "What would it do if someone drank it?" Samuel folded his arms. "That depends on the dosage, and if the dosage was significant." "It could make someone dizzy," he said. "Disoriented." He hesitated before continuing. "In some cases, it can cause a person to lose consciousness." The room suddenly felt very quiet. "You mean pass out?" "Yes." My mind jumped instantly back to the wedding reception. Hundreds of guests, music, Michael and Vanessa standing in front of everyone. If I had suddenly collapsed in the middle of the celebration, the thought made my stomach twist. "Would it be dangerous?" I asked. "Not necessarily," Samuel replied carefully. "These drugs are commonly prescribed, but in alcohol, the effects can be stronger. Stronger how you might appear confused, weak, perhaps even unable to stand." I stared at the counter. "So if I had drunk it, you might have fainted." Samuel's voice softened slightly. "Possibly right in the middle of the reception." A cold feeling spread through my chest, embarrassment, concern, but also something else, a question. Why? I looked up at him again. "Samuel, why would anyone want that to happen?" He considered the question. "Well," he said slowly, "sometimes people use sedatives to calm someone down. That doesn't make sense." "No," he agreed. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. "Unless the goal wasn't to calm you." "What do you mean?" He leaned back against the counter. "If someone collapsed suddenly at a large event," he said, "especially someone older, people might assume a medical problem." I finished. "Yes." My mind began racing. Guests whispering, concerned voices, Michael rushing to my side. Perhaps someone suggesting that maybe I shouldn't be living alone anymore. Maybe someone else should manage things, my finances, my home, my decisions. I felt a chill crawl slowly down my spine. Samuel must have seen the realization on my face. "You think this might be part of something bigger," he said quietly. "I don't know," I admitted, "but something about it doesn't feel right." We both looked down at the champagne glass again. The golden liquid still shimmered under the kitchen light. Beautiful, elegant, dangerous. Finally, Samuel spoke again. "Olivia, does Michael know about this?" "No." "Does Vanessa?" "I don't think so." He nodded slowly. "Then whoever put the sedative in that drink probably believes you already consumed it." The words hung heavily in the air, which meant that right now, back at the wedding reception, Vanessa Carter was likely waiting for me to collapse. And when it didn't happen, she might start asking questions. For a long moment, neither Samuel nor I spoke. The champagne glass sat between us on the counter, the pale gold liquid still catching the kitchen light like nothing in the world was wrong with it. But now we both knew better. Samuel finally broke the silence. "How long ago did this happen?" "About 40 minutes, I said, maybe a little more, and the reception is still going on." "Yes. Does anyone know you left?" "I don't think so." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "That means whoever put this in the drink probably still believes you consumed it." His words echoed the same thought that had already been forming in my mind. Back at the wedding reception, Vanessa was likely expecting something very specific to happen. a moment of dizziness, confusion, perhaps even a collapse. Instead, I had quietly walked away, which meant that sooner or later she would notice something was wrong with her plan. I felt a slow tension tightening in my chest. What should I do? I asked. Samuel leaned his elbows on the counter, considering. Well, he said slowly, you have a few options, such as you could call the police. The idea came as a jolt. The police. At Michael's wedding. I imagined flashing lights outside the hotel officers walking through the reception hall while guests whispered and stared, my son's wedding day turning into a spectacle. The thought made my stomach twist. I don't want to destroy his wedding, I said quietly. Samuel studied me carefully. You might not be the one destroying it. He wasn't wrong, but still. Michael had been through enough over the years, his divorce, the long struggle of raising Noah as a single father for several years before his ex-wife moved across the country. Today was supposed to be a new beginning for him, a joyful one. Let's not involve the police yet, I said. Samuel nodded slowly. That's fair. He tapped the counter lightly. But I do think you should return to the reception. I blinked. Return, yes. To the woman who may have drugged my drink, exactly, I stared at him. That sounds like a terrible idea. Samuel gave a small smile. Not necessarily. Why? Because right now she believes something has already happened. He gestured toward the glass. She thinks you drank this. I thought about that. And if she believes that he continued, she'll likely be watching you closely, waiting for me to collapse. Precisely. A quiet realization began to take shape in my mind. If I go back, and act normal, then she'll know something went wrong. Samuel nodded. And people often reveal a great deal when their plans start to fall apart. I folded my arms, thinking, you're suggesting I pretend nothing happened. Exactly. And see what she does next. Exactly. The idea was unsettling, but it also made a strange kind of sense. If Vanessa had planned something, she wouldn't simply forget about it when it didn't work. She would react, and that reaction might reveal the truth. Samuel reached for a small plastic container and carefully transferred the remaining champagne into it. I'll keep this sample, he said, in case we need proper laboratory testing later. That sounds wise. He sealed the container and placed it in his refrigerator. Then he turned back to me. Are you all right? I took a slow breath. I think so. Good. He handed me a clean glass of water. Drink this. I took a sip. The cool water steadied my nerves slightly, but my mind was still racing. Samuel leaned against the counter again. Tell me something, he said. Yes, before today. Did Vanessa ever give you reason to distrust her? The question brought back the memories I had already been revisiting earlier. The conversations about my finances, the subtle questions about my home. But those things alone weren't enough to prove anything. She's always been very interested, I said carefully. In what? My investments. My house. My will. Samuel raised an eyebrow. That's unusual, yes, but she always framed it as concern. Concern that managing everything might become difficult as I get older. Samuel's expression darkened slightly. That's a convenient narrative. I thought so too, I admitted, but I never wanted to seem suspicious. And now I'm not sure what to think. Samuel considered that. Has Michael ever discussed taking over your finances? No. He's a good son. The best, I said immediately. He's responsible, hardworking, and kind. Does he need money? Numbers. Samuel nodded. Then if Vanessa is involved in something, it may not include him. I had been thinking the same thing. Michael loved me. He might be many things, stubborn sometimes, overly trusting, but he would never intentionally harm me, which left only one possibility. Vanessa. My chest tightened again. I don't understand why she would do something like this. Samuel looked at me quietly. Money makes people do strange things, Olivia. I sighed. That's what worries me. Samuel glanced toward the window where the sky had darkened to deep blue. You should probably return soon. Yes, before someone notices, you've been gone too long. I stood and picked up my purse. Samuel? Yes, thank you. He gave a small shrug. Your husband once saved me from a very bad fishing trip, he said with a faint smile. I owe him a few favors. I laughed softly despite the tension. I'll call you tonight, please do. He walked me to the door. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air brushed against my face. The drive back to the hotel felt shorter than before, but the closer I got, the heavier my thoughts became. By the time I pulled into the parking lot again, the reception was in full swing. Music pulsed through the open terrace doors. Guests danced beneath the lights. Everything looked exactly the same as when I left, except now I knew something the rest of them didn't. I stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the terrace. The sound of laughter grew louder as I approached, and then I saw him, Noah. He was sitting at one of the tables, swinging his legs nervously beneath his chair. The moment he spotted me, his eyes widened. He jumped down and ran toward me. "Grandma." I crouched down and hugged him. "You're back," he whispered. "Yes, did you drink it?" "No." He sighed with visible relief. "Good." I smiled gently and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "You did the right thing telling me." He nodded, though his eyes still looked worried. "Are you going to tell Dad?" "Not yet," I said. "Why not?" Because first, I replied softly, "I want to see what someone does when their plan doesn't work." Noah frowned slightly, not fully understanding, but he trusted me. He squeezed my hand once before running back toward his table. I straightened and stepped onto the terrace. The moment I did, several guests greeted me warmly. "Olivia, there you are. We were wondering where you went." I smiled politely and exchanged a few brief words with them, but my eyes were already searching the crowd. It didn't take long to find her. Vanessa stood near the bar speaking with two bridesmaids. When she saw me walking across the terrace, her smile froze. Just for a second, a tiny flicker of surprise passed across her face. Then the smile returned. But I noticed the difference. She hadn't expected to see me standing, and suddenly I had a very strong feeling that the next few minutes were going to reveal exactly what kind of woman my son had just married. Vanessa recovered quickly. I'll give her that. By the time I reached the center of the terrace, her expression had already smoothed back into that flawless, radiant smile everyone adored. She excused herself from the bridesmaids and walked toward me with effortless grace, her wedding dress gliding across the wooden floor as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. But I had seen it. That split second, the flicker of surprise, and something else behind it, something sharper. "Olivia," she said warmly, reaching for my hands. "There you are. We were just wondering where you disappeared to." Her fingers wrapped gently around mine, soft, careful, controlled. "I needed a bit of fresh air," I replied calmly. "That makes sense," she said, tilting her head slightly. "It's been such a full day." Her eyes moved quickly over my face, studying, measuring, waiting. I could almost feel her searching for signs, dizziness, confusion, weakness. Anything that would confirm her plan had worked, but I gave her nothing. "I hope you're enjoying yourself," she added lightly. "I am," I said, meeting her gaze. "It's a beautiful wedding." Her smile deepened. "I'm so glad." There was a pause, a small one, but heavy. She glanced briefly at the champagne glass in my hand. Only I wasn't holding one anymore. That detail did not escape her. "Oh," she said almost casually. "Did you finish your champagne?" The question was light, playful, but underneath it there was something else, a test. I let out a small laugh. "I must have set it down somewhere," I said. I got distracted. Her eyes lingered on me for just a fraction longer than necessary. Then she nodded. "That happens at weddings," she said smoothly. Behind her, the music shifted into a slower melody, and several couples began moving toward the dance floor. Michael appeared at her side a moment later. "There you are, Mom," he said, smiling. "We thought we lost you." "I'm right here," I replied. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. "You feeling okay?" he asked. "You look a little pale." Vanessa's gaze snapped back to my face. There it was again, that quick, sharp attention. Waiting. I smiled reassuringly. "I'm perfectly fine." Michael studied me for a second, then nodded. "Good. I just wanted to make sure." Vanessa slipped her arm through his. "She just needed some air," she said lightly. Michael relaxed. "Well, as long as you're all right, I am." He gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze before turning back to greet another group of guests. Vanessa didn't follow him immediately. Instead, she stayed where she was, with me. "I'm so happy you're here today, Olivia," she said softly. Her tone had changed. Lower, more intimate. "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied. She smiled again, but she added her voice just barely above a whisper. These kinds of events can be overwhelming. I felt a subtle chill at her choice of words. Sometimes I agreed. For some people, she continued, it can be a little too much. Her eyes held mine, steady, unblinking. I tilted my head slightly. "I've been to quite a few weddings in my life," I said. "I think I can handle it." Her lips curved again, but this time the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm sure you can," she said. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she stepped back, smoothing her dress. "Well," she said brightly, "we should probably get ready for the toast." I nodded. Of course. As she turned to walk away, I watched her carefully. Her posture was still perfect, her movement still graceful, but there was a new tension in her shoulders, a stiffness that hadn't been there before. She had expected something to happen, and it hadn't, which meant she was now trying to figure out why. Good, I thought. Let her wonder. I moved toward one of the nearby tables where Noah sat. He looked up at me immediately. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Is she going to get in trouble?" I hesitated. Not yet. He frowned. "But she did something bad." "Yes," I said gently, "but sometimes we need to understand everything before we act." He didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. I rested my hand on his shoulder for a moment before turning my attention back to the room. Guests were beginning to gather near the head table. The wedding planner moved quickly between tables, coordinating the next part of the evening. Within minutes, everyone was seated. The lights dimmed slightly and the band softened their music. A microphone was brought to the front. Michael stepped forward. "Thank you, everyone," he said, his voice warm and steady. "We're so grateful you could all be here today to celebrate with us." Applause filled the room. Vanessa stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She looked radiant, composed, untouched. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have believed she was everything she appeared to be. Michael continued speaking, thanking family, friends, and loved ones. Then he gestured toward me. "And I'd like to say something about my mom," he said. A gentle murmur moved through the guests. I felt 100 pairs of eyes turn toward me. Vanessa's hand tightened slightly on Michael's arm. Just a fraction, but I saw it. "My mom has always been the strongest person I know," Michael continued. "She's been there for me through everything, and today it means the world to have her here." My chest tightened with emotion. I smiled softly. "Mom," he said, raising his glass, "this one's for you." The room followed, glasses lifted. Champagne sparkled in every hand. Vanessa turned her head toward me slowly, very slowly, and for the briefest moment I saw it. Not a smile, not warmth, but calculation. She was watching me again, waiting, expecting. Because this was the moment. If I had consumed the drink earlier, this would have been the perfect time for the effects to appear, in front of everyone, during the toast, a public collapse, a moment no one would forget, but instead I was standing there, clear-headed, steady, alive. I reached for a fresh glass from a passing tray. Vanessa's eyes flickered. I lifted it calmly, met her gaze, and took a slow, deliberate sip. Her expression changed, just slightly, but enough. Enough for me to know she understood. Something had gone wrong, and now she was going to have to fix it. The champagne tasted perfectly normal, dry, crisp, harmless. I let it rest on my tongue for a moment before swallowing my eyes, never leaving Vanessa's face. She noticed. Of course she did. Vanessa Carter noticed everything. For just a fraction of a second, her composure cracked. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to see, but I saw it. A tightening around her eyes, a pause in her breathing, a flicker of something sharp and calculating beneath that flawless bridal smile. Then it was gone. She raised her own glass, turning back toward the crowd as if nothing had happened. "To family," Michael said, lifting his champagne. "To family," the guests echoed. Glasses clinked, music swelled, applause followed. But beneath the celebration, something had shifted. Vanessa knew. She knew that whatever she had expected to happen hadn't. And now she had to adjust. I lowered my glass slowly, placing it back on the tray of a passing server. My heart was steady, but my mind was racing. If her original plan had been for me to collapse during the toast, then my standing here perfectly fine had disrupted something carefully arranged, which meant one thing: she wouldn't stop. People like that never did. They adapted. They tried again. I glanced toward Noah's table. He was watching me closely, his small hands gripping the edge of the chair. When our eyes met, I gave him a reassuring nod. "I'm okay." He nodded back, though his expression remained tense. Good, I thought. Stay alert. The music picked up again and guests began returning to their conversations. Some drifted toward the dance floor. Others moved toward the bar. The night carried on. But Vanessa didn't. Not entirely. I noticed how she stayed close to Michael, now closer than before. Her hand remained looped through his arm almost constantly, her smile never faltering as she greeted guests, accepted congratulations, and laughed at every joke. But her eyes kept scanning, looking for me. Every few minutes I caught her glancing in my direction, not openly, not obviously, but enough for me to know she was watching carefully, waiting, trying to understand. I moved slowly through the crowd, exchanging polite conversation, thanking guests for attending, keeping my voice calm and steady. Outwardly, everything appeared normal. Inside, I was tracking her every movement. At one point, she excused herself from Michael and walked toward the bar. I followed casually, taking my time. By the time I reached the bar area, she was already speaking quietly to one of the bartenders. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught a few words. "No, not that one. The other tray. Just leave it for now." Her voice was low, controlled, but there was urgency in it. The bartender nodded, slightly confused, and began rearranging glasses behind the counter. I stepped closer. "Vanessa," I said warmly. She turned quickly, too quickly. "Oh, Olivia," she said, her smile returning instantly. "I didn't see you there. I was just getting another drink," I replied. "Of course," she said lightly, stepping slightly to the side, but I noticed the way she subtly shifted her body, blocking part of the counter behind her. Interesting. "What were you just saying?" I asked casually. "Nothing important," she said. "Just making sure everything's running smoothly." "I'm sure it is," I said, glancing at the bartender, who looked a bit uncertain. Vanessa followed my gaze, then laughed softly. "You know how weddings are," she added. "There's always something to adjust." "Yes," I said. "I suppose there is." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt different now, heavier. No longer the easy warmth of earlier in the day. This was something else. A quiet standoff. Then Vanessa leaned slightly closer. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked again, her voice soft. I met her eyes. "I feel perfectly fine." Her gaze held mine for a second longer than necessary. Then she smiled. "I'm glad." She straightened, smoothing her dress. "I should get back to Michael," she said. "Of course." She turned and walked away, her movements graceful as ever. But once again, I saw it. That tension, that calculation. I turned to the bartender. "What was she asking about?" I said quietly. He hesitated. She just wanted to make sure the drinks were being rotated properly," he said. "Rotated, yeah," he said, "like making sure fresh glasses are being brought out, that's all." He nodded. "I think so." I studied his face for a moment. He seemed genuinely unsure. Not involved, just following instructions. "Thank you," I said. He gave a small nod and returned to his work. I picked up a glass of sparkling water instead of champagne this time. No reason to take unnecessary risks. As I stepped away from the bar, my mind was working quickly. She had tried once, and now she was already adjusting something at the bar. Was she planning to try again? Or was she simply trying to cover her tracks? Either way, I needed to stay ahead of her. I moved back toward the seating area and took a quiet seat at one of the side tables. From there, I had a clear view of most of the terrace. Vanessa rejoined Michael, slipping her arm through his again. She leaned in, whispering something in his ear. He laughed, completely unaware, completely trusting. My chest tightened at the sight. Michael had no idea who he had just married, no idea what she might have been willing to do. I looked down at my hands for a moment, then back up at the couple. "No," I thought firmly. "This doesn't end here. I wouldn't let it." Across the terrace, Vanessa's eyes found mine again. This time, she didn't look away immediately. She held my gaze. And for the first time that evening, her smile didn't return. Not fully, just a faint curve of her lips, controlled, measured, as if she were acknowledging something silently. A realization, a shift. We both knew now, the game had changed, and neither of us was pretending anymore. I held Vanessa's gaze a moment longer than was polite, just long enough for her to understand that I wasn't confused, and I certainly wasn't unaware. Then I looked away. Not out of fear, but because I didn't want to reveal too much too soon. People like Vanessa thrived on control, on knowing what others were thinking, what they were planning. If she realized how much I already suspected, she might change her strategy in ways I couldn't predict, and right now I needed her predictable. The music shifted again, softer now, signaling the transition into the next part of the evening. A few guests moved toward the dance floor while others returned to their seats. I remained where I was, quietly observing. Across the terrace, Vanessa leaned in close to Michael, whispering something into his ear. He smiled, nodding as if she had suggested something simple, harmless. Then she stepped away, alone. That was new. Until now, she had stayed close to him almost constantly, but now she moved with purpose, weaving through the crowd toward the far end of the terrace, toward the hallway that led inside, toward the kitchen. My pulse ticked up. There it is. I waited a few seconds, counted to 5, then 10. Then I stood. Moving slowly, casually, I followed. Not directly behind her, that would have been too obvious. Instead, I took a wide path, stopping briefly to exchange a few words with a passing guest, nodding politely, smiling where necessary. But my eyes never lost her. Vanessa slipped through the doors into the interior hallway. I followed a few seconds later. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. Outside, the reception was alive with light and music. Inside, the hallway was quiet, still. The sound of my heels echoed faintly as I moved forward. I slowed my pace, careful now. Up ahead, I heard voices. Vanessa's voice, low, controlled, and another voice, a man's. I stopped just before the corner and leaned slightly against the wall out of sight. No, it didn't work, Vanessa was saying. My breath caught. The man replied, his tone uncertain. What do you mean it didn't work? She didn't drink it, Vanessa said, her voice tight with irritation. Or if she did, it wasn't enough. My fingers curled slightly against the wall. She's still walking around like nothing happened. A pause. Then the man spoke again. So what now? Vanessa exhaled sharply. I need another way, another way. The words echoed in my mind. You said it would be enough, she continued. You said one dose would make her disoriented. It should have, the man replied defensively. Unless she barely touched it. She must have suspected something, Vanessa muttered. I felt a cold, steady clarity settle over me. So it was true. No misunderstanding, no innocent explanation. This had been intentional, planned. And Michael, the man, asked. He doesn't know anything, Vanessa said quickly. And he's not going to. Good. I just need a moment where she looks unstable, Vanessa continued. That's all it takes. One moment in front of the right people. My chest tightened. She's already 68, she added. If she collapses or acts confused, no one will question it. The calmness in her voice was what disturbed me the most. Not anger, not panic, just calculation. And then the man asked. Then it's simple, Vanessa said. Michael steps in. Temporary oversight, medical concerns. It becomes permanent if necessary. I close my eyes briefly. There it is. The plan. Clear, cold, precise. Just be careful, the man said. You don't want this traced back to you. It won't be, Vanessa replied. It never is. A faint rustling sound followed. Movement. They were about to leave. I stepped back quietly, moving away from the corner before they could turn. My heart was beating steadily now. Not fast, not panicked, but focused. When Vanessa stepped into the hallway a few seconds later, I was already walking toward the restroom as if I had just arrived. She paused when she saw me. Again. That flicker. Olivia, she said, her voice smoothing instantly. I didn't expect to see you in here. I needed a moment, I replied. Of course, she said. The man who had been speaking with her, a catering staff member, I realized now, quickly excused himself and walked past me without making eye contact. Vanessa watched him go, then turned back to me. Everything all right, she asked. Her tone was gentle, concerned, convincing. I almost admired the performance. Yes, I said simply. We stood there for a moment. Just the two of us. No music, no guests, no distractions, just silence. Then she smiled again. Well, she said we should get back to the party. Yes, I agreed. She stepped past me, her shoulder brushing lightly against mine, intentional, controlled, a subtle assertion of presence. I waited until she disappeared down the hallway before moving again, but I didn't return to the reception immediately. Instead, I stood there, alone, letting everything settle. She had tried to drug me. She had a partner, someone on the staff. She had a plan to make me appear unstable, to create a situation where Michael would be encouraged to take control of my finances, and she was already preparing to try again. I opened my eyes slowly. No more guessing, no more suspicion. Now I knew, and that changed everything. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved quickly. One message. To Daniel Brooks, my attorney. Are you nearby? I need you at the wedding. Urgent, I hit send. Then I took a deep breath. Vanessa wanted a moment where I would appear weak, confused, vulnerable. Instead, I was going to give her a moment she would never forget. I didn't go back to the terrace right away. For the first time since Noah had grabbed my sleeve, I allowed myself to stand still and breathe, really breathe, letting the truth settle into something solid inside me. Vanessa wasn't guessing. She wasn't improvising. She had done this before. And if I wanted to stop her, not just for myself, but for anyone else she might hurt, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. Real proof. Not just what I had overheard. Not just what Samuel had tested. Something undeniable. Something that would hold up in front of Michael and anyone else. I stepped toward the far end of the hallway, away from the noise of the reception, and pulled out my phone again. There was one thing I hadn't done yet. Something I should have done the moment Samuel confirmed the sedative. I opened my browser and typed in a name. Vanessa Carter, Santa Barbara. The results loaded quickly. Most of what appeared was exactly what I expected. Social media profiles, wedding announcements, a few professional listings tied to her marketing background. Everything polished, curated, clean, too clean. I narrowed my search. Vanessa Carter, previous marriage. For a moment, nothing unusual appeared. Then I added another term. Vanessa Carter, David Parker. This time, something surfaced, a small article, buried beneath pages of unrelated results. I tapped it. It opened to a local news site from Arizona. 5 years old, short, almost forgettable. But as I read it, a quiet chill spread through me. Local business owner declared legally incapacitated after sudden health incident. The name, David Parker. The details were vague. A sudden episode at a public event. Disorientation, collapse, medical concerns. Within weeks, a legal arrangement had been made, temporary financial guardianship granted to his wife, Vanessa Parker. My grip tightened slightly around the phone. The article continued. 3 months later, Parker's financial holdings had been significantly altered. Properties sold, accounts transferred, then the story ended. No follow-up, no resolution, just silence. I scrolled further. Another article, smaller, less formal. Arizona woman leaves state after divorce settlement. No name in the headline, but inside, Vanessa. No mention of wrongdoing, no charges, nothing illegal, just disappearance. I lowered the phone slowly. There it is. Not proof. Not enough on its own, but a pattern, a method, a rehearsal. I slipped the phone back into my purse just as a soft vibration followed. A message. Daniel Brooks. I'm 5 minutes away. What's going on, good? I typed quickly. Meet me near the back entrance. Do not go to the main reception. I hit send and took a steadying breath. This was moving faster now. Faster than I had planned. But Vanessa had already accelerated things. She was preparing to act again, which meant I didn't have time to wait. I turned and walked back toward the terrace. The moment I stepped outside, the warmth of the evening wrapped around me again. The music had grown livelier. Guests were dancing, laughing, celebrating. Everything looked exactly as it should. But now I could see the cracks beneath it, the hidden currents, the quiet manipulation moving through the room like something invisible. And at the center of it, Vanessa. She stood near the dance floor now, speaking with one of Michael's colleagues. Her smile was flawless, her posture elegant, her voice no doubt perfectly measured, but I knew what was underneath, and I knew she hadn't given up. I moved through the crowd slowly, careful not to draw attention. As I passed one of the servers, I noticed something. A tray, fresh drinks, champagne, identical to the ones from earlier. But this time, I watched closely. The server hesitated, just slightly, as if unsure, then continued walking. I followed him with my eyes. He moved toward the head table, toward Michael, toward no. Not again. My chest tightened. I shifted my path, immediately intercepting the server before he reached them. "Excuse me," I said gently. He stopped. "Yes, ma'am," I smiled. "May I?" I reached for one of the glasses. He nodded, relieved. "Of course." I took it, held it up briefly, looked at it. Normal again. Perfectly normal, too normal. "Thank you," I said. He nodded and continued on. I didn't drink it. Instead, I turned. And this time, I walked straight toward Vanessa. She saw me coming. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. I stopped a few feet in front of her. Vanessa, I said warmly. Olivia, she replied. I wanted to say something, of course. I lifted the glass slightly. The champagne is lovely. A pause. Tiny. Almost invisible. I'm glad you like it, she said. I was thinking, I continued, maybe we should have a proper toast. Her smile widened. That sounds wonderful. I nodded. To new beginnings, I said softly. To family, she replied. Our glasses lifted at the same time. For a moment we stood there. Two women, both smiling, both composed, both fully aware of the other, and then I didn't drink. Neither did she. Another pause. Longer. Heavier. Then I lowered my glass. So I said lightly, tell me something. Yes? Have you ever been to Arizona? The question landed exactly as I intended. Her smile didn't vanish, but it changed, just slightly. Arizona, she repeated. Yes, why do you ask? I tilted my head, just curious. She held my gaze. Steady, calculating. No, she said, I haven't. Lie, clean, immediate. Practiced, I nodded slowly. Interesting. Another silence. Then she spoke. Olivia, she said gently, is there something you'd like to say to me? Her tone was calm, but there was steel underneath now. No more pretending, not entirely. I smiled. Yes, I said, there is. And just then, my phone vibrated again. I glanced down briefly. Daniel Brooks. I'm here. Perfect. I looked back at Vanessa, and for the first time that evening, I let my smile change. Not warm, not polite, but certain. Excuse me, I said, I have someone I need to speak with. And without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, watching me, realizing that whatever game she thought she was playing was about to end. I didn't look back at Vanessa, not immediately. I could feel her eyes on me as I moved through the crowd, but I kept my pace steady, unhurried, controlled. The worst thing I could do now was rush. Panic would only give her time to adjust again. Instead, I slipped quietly off the terrace and into the dim hallway, the music fading behind me once more. Daniel Brooks was waiting near the side entrance exactly as I had asked. He stood with his back to the wall, a tall man in his late 50s dressed in a dark suit that somehow still looked formal enough for a wedding but sharp enough for a courtroom. His expression shifted the moment he saw me. Olivia, he said, stepping forward. You sounded urgent. I was, I replied. He studied my face for a moment. What happened? I took a slow breath. My daughter-in-law just tried to drug me. Daniel didn't react dramatically. He didn't gasp or interrupt. He simply held my gaze and said, start from the beginning. And so I did. I told him everything. Noah's warning, the champagne, the bitterness, Samuel's test results, the overheard conversation in the hallway, the plan. As I spoke, Daniel's expression remained focused, analytical. He didn't rush me. He didn't question the details prematurely. He simply listened, absorbing each piece. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then he nodded once. All right, he said. That's serious, yes. And you're certain about what you heard completely. And the test confirmed a sedative, yes. He exhaled slowly. Do you still have the sample Samuel does? Good. He glanced toward the terrace where the muffled music continued. And Vanessa doesn't know that, you know. Not fully, I said, but she knows something didn't go as planned. Daniel considered that. That gives us a narrow window. For what? For control. I folded my arms. What do you suggest? He met my eyes. We don't call the police yet. Relief flickered briefly in my chest, but we prepare as if we might, he added. I nodded. Okay. Right now, he continued, we need two things. What witnesses and pressure? I frowned slightly. Explain. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. You have information, he said, but information alone isn't enough. We need her to expose herself or at least confirm enough behavior in front of others that no one can dismiss this as misunderstanding. You want her to reveal herself publicly. Yes, I thought about that. And how do we do that? Daniel's gaze sharpened slightly. We give her what she wants. I felt a chill run through me. You mean you act weak, he said, just enough. I stared at him. You want me to pretend the drug worked. Exactly. And then what? She'll move forward, he said. She'll try to take control of the situation. And that's when you step in. That's when we step in, he corrected. I considered the idea carefully. It was risky, very risky. But it also made sense. Vanessa was already planning her next move. If we didn't control the timing, she would. And that could be worse. How far do I take it, I asked. Enough to make it believable, Daniel said. Dizziness, confusion, maybe difficulty standing. And Michael Daniel paused. He needs to see it, he said. But more importantly, he needs to see what she does next. My chest tightened slightly. This was going to hurt him. There was no way around that, but if I didn't do this, he might never see the truth. I nodded slowly. All right. Daniel checked his watch. When do you think she'll act again? Soon, I said. She already tried to adjust something at the bar. Then we don't wait. He straightened his jacket. I'll position myself nearby, he said, close enough to intervene when necessary. And the sample I'll contact Samuel after this, he said. If we need formal documentation, we'll have it. I took a deep breath. Okay. Daniel gave me a steady look. Are you ready for this? I hesitated, then nodded. Yes, good. He stepped back toward the shadows near the entrance. I'll be watching. I turned and walked back toward the terrace. This time, everything felt different. The music, the laughter, the lights, it all looked the same. But now I was stepping into something deliberate, a performance, a controlled fall. As I re-entered the reception, I let my shoulders relax slightly. My steps slowed, not dramatically, just enough, subtle, believable. I moved toward one of the nearby tables and placed my hand lightly against the edge, as if I needed support. A few guests glanced at me. Concern flickered briefly in their expressions. Good, let them notice. I took another step, slightly uneven this time, then another. I let my breathing change just enough to appear unsettled. Across the terrace, I saw Vanessa. She saw me too, and instantly she moved, faster than before. Her smile was gone now, replaced with something else. Focus, intent. She crossed the distance between us, quickly weaving through the guests. Olivia, she said, her voice filled with sudden concern. Are you all right? I blinked slowly, let my eyes unfocus slightly. I'm fine, I said, though my voice came out weaker than before. Perfect. Her hand was on my arm immediately, steadying, guiding, too ready. I think you should sit down, she said. Yes, maybe. I let my weight shift slightly toward her. Not too much, just enough. She turned to the nearest guests. I think she's not feeling well. She said, her tone controlled but urgent. Several people stood. What happened? Is she okay? I don't know, Vanessa replied. She was fine a moment ago. Of course I was. That was the point. Michael appeared seconds later. Mom? His voice cut through everything, sharp, concerned, real. I forced my gaze toward him. Michael. I let my hand tremble slightly. I feel dizzy. His face changed instantly. Sit down, he said, moving to my other side. I've got you. Vanessa stepped back slightly, giving him space, but not too much. Always close, always involved. I told you earlier she looked pale, she said softly. I think it's too much for her. Too much. There it is. The narrative. Already forming, already taking shape. Michael helped me into a chair. Mom, stay with me, he said. Do you need water? A doctor? I don't know. I let my words drift, uncertain, fragile. Around us the guests murmured. Concern spread, attention focused, exactly as planned. And then Vanessa leaned closer to Michael, her voice low, careful, measured. I don't think she should be alone anymore, she said quietly. I think this might be more serious than we thought. And just like that, she made her move. Michael's face tightened as Vanessa's words settled in. I don't think she should be alone anymore. It was said softly, gently, as if it came from concern. But I heard the precision in it, the intention, and more importantly, so did Daniel. I didn't look for him, but I knew he was nearby, watching, waiting. Everything depended on what happened next. Mom, Michael said, kneeling slightly in front of me. Can you look at me? I forced my eyes to focus slowly as if it took effort. I'm here, I said faintly. He exhaled with relief. Okay, good, stay with me, I'm just a little lightheaded. Vanessa crouched beside him, placing a careful hand on his arm. Michael, she said quietly, this is exactly what I was worried about. Her voice was calm, measured, every word placed perfectly. What do you mean, he asked, his attention still split between me and her. She's been pushing herself too hard, Vanessa continued. Big events like this can be overwhelming. Michael frowned. She was fine earlier. Yes, Vanessa said gently, but these things can come on suddenly. I let my hand tremble again just slightly. Not too much, enough. Maybe we should get her somewhere quieter, Vanessa added. A room, away from the noise. Michael nodded instinctively. Yeah, that makes sense. There it is. Step 1. Isolate, control the environment. I could almost hear Daniel's voice in my head. Let her show her plan. Okay, Michael said, standing. Let's get you inside. He reached for my arm. I let him help me up, leaning just enough to make it believable. Vanessa immediately stepped in on my other side. I've got her, she said smoothly. Of course you do. We moved slowly toward the hallway. Guests parted around us, concern written across their faces. Is she okay? Should we call someone? It's probably just the heat, Vanessa said reassuringly. She'll be fine, always controlling the narrative, always ahead of the moment. We reached the hallway and the noise of the reception faded behind us. The quiet returned, cool, still, controlled. Vanessa guided us toward a small private room near the back, likely arranged for the bridal party earlier in the day. Here, she said, opening the door. This will be better. Michael helped me sit down on a cushioned chair inside. You okay? He asked again. I let my head tilt slightly. I think so. Vanessa closed the door behind us, not fully, just enough. Enough to create a sense of privacy, but not isolation. Interesting. She was careful. Very careful. I'm going to get her some water, Michael said, starting toward the door. I'll do it, Vanessa said quickly. Too quickly. Michael paused. It's fine, she added, softening her tone. You stay with her. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Vanessa gave him a reassuring smile and stepped out of the room. The moment she was gone, I straightened. Not fully, but enough. Michael noticed immediately. Mom, he said, confused. What, listen to me, I said quietly. His expression shifted. Are you just listen? Something in my tone stopped him. He leaned closer. What's going on? Vanessa put something in my drink, I said. The words landed hard. What, I didn't drink it. I had it tested. His face went pale. That's not, it's a sedative, I continued. I overheard her. She was planning for me to collapse. Michael stared at me. No, that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't, I said gently. But it's true. He shook his head slightly. Why would she, to make me appear unstable, I said. To create a situation where someone else would need to manage my finances. The room felt very still. Michael's breathing slowed, his eyes searched mine, looking for doubt, for uncertainty. He didn't find any. You're serious, he said quietly. Yes. He ran a hand through his hair. This doesn't make any sense, I know, I said. But you need to watch what she does next. What do you mean she's going to push you? I said gently, carefully. She's going to suggest that I need help, that I shouldn't be alone. Michael's jaw tightened. She already started, I added softly. He looked at me sharply. What outside? Just now. His expression changed. Not fully, but something shifted. A crack. Before he could respond, the door opened. Vanessa stepped back in, holding a glass of water. Her smile returned instantly. I've got some water for you, she said warmly. She walked over and handed it to me. I accepted it, my hands steady again, but I kept my performance subtle. Thank you, I said. Michael stood slowly. His eyes were on her now. Watching, really watching. For the first time. Vanessa, he said. Yes, she replied, turning to him. What were you saying earlier? Her smile didn't falter. About what? About my mom not being able to stay alone, a pause. Just a fraction. Then she responded. I was just concerned, she said gently. You saw what happened. Michael didn't answer immediately. He studied her. And I saw it. That shift, that tiny break in trust. Vanessa noticed it too. Of course she did. Her expression softened further. I care about her, she said. I care about both of you. Her voice was perfect, convincing. But now it wasn't enough, because for the first time Michael was questioning. And just outside the slightly open door, I caught a glimpse of Daniel, standing in the hallway, watching everything, waiting. For a moment, no one moved. The small room felt too quiet, too contained, like the air itself was holding its breath. Vanessa stood between Michael and me, still holding that carefully constructed expression of concern. The glass of water she had handed me sat untouched in my lap. Michael looked at her. Not the way he had earlier, warm, trusting, unquestioning. Now his eyes were searching, measuring, trying to reconcile two completely different versions of the same person. Vanessa, he said slowly, what exactly did you mean when you said my mom shouldn't be alone anymore? Her smile softened. "It was just concern, Michael," she said gently. "You saw what happened. She got dizzy out of nowhere. It didn't feel like nowhere," he replied. A flicker crossed her face, gone almost instantly. "What do you mean?" she asked. Michael hesitated, then glanced at me. I gave him the smallest nod. "Trust yourself." He turned back to her. "It felt sudden," he said. "Too sudden." Vanessa let out a soft breath, almost like a quiet laugh. "Michael," she said, stepping closer to him. "She's 68. These things happen." There it was again. The number, the age, the framing. Not cruel, not obvious, but deliberate. "She's been under stress," Vanessa continued. "The wedding, the guests, everything going on." "I've been to plenty of weddings," I said calmly. Her eyes snapped to me, and for the first time, I didn't pretend. I sat up straighter. Steady, clear, the shift was subtle, but unmistakable. Michael saw it. Vanessa saw it. And in that moment, everything changed. Olivia Vanessa said, her voice tightening slightly. "Are you feeling better?" "Yes," I replied evenly. The word landed harder than anything else I could have said. Because it wasn't weak. It wasn't confused. It was certain. Michael's head turned toward me. "Mom?" I stood. Slowly, but without help. Without hesitation. "I think we should stop pretending," I said. The room went completely still. Vanessa's expression froze. "What do you mean?" she asked, though the softness in her voice was beginning to crack. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table between us. "I didn't drink the champagne," I said. Michael's breath caught. Vanessa didn't move. I had it tested. I continued. It contained a sedative. Silence. Heavy. Final. "That's ridiculous," Vanessa said immediately. "Too quickly, too sharp." Michael looked at her, then back at me. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," I replied calmly, "that someone put something in my drink, and I know who." Vanessa's eyes hardened. "Olivia, this is absurd. I also overheard you," I said, cutting through her words. That stopped her. Not just her voice, her entire posture. "You were in the hallway," I continued, "talking to someone from the staff." Michael's face turned slowly toward her. "Vanessa." She laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "This is insane," she said. "You're accusing me based on what, a misunderstanding? Something you think you heard." I held her gaze. "You said it didn't work." Her lips parted slightly. "Just enough." "You said she didn't drink it." Her breathing changed. "Barely, but I saw it." "And you said," I added quietly, "once she collapses, everything becomes easier." The words hung in the air, unmovable, irreversible. Michael stepped back slightly. "What?" Vanessa turned to him quickly. "Michael, she's confused," she said. "This is exactly what I was worried about." The pivot, immediate. "She's imagining things." Vanessa continued, her voice softening again. "You saw her earlier. She was dizzy, disoriented." "I wasn't," I said, firm, clear, unshaken. Vanessa's composure began to fracture. "You're not thinking clearly," she insisted. "I had the drink tested," I repeated. "And my attorney is here." The last sentence landed like a hammer. Vanessa's head turned sharply toward the door, and right on cue, Daniel Brooks stepped inside, calm, composed, professional. "Good evening," he said. Vanessa stared at him, then back at me, then at Michael. The room shifted again. This time, there was no going back. Daniel stepped forward. "I've been informed of the situation," he said evenly, "and I would strongly advise that we proceed carefully from this point forward." Michael looked between us. "What is happening?" he asked, his voice strained. Daniel met his gaze. "Your mother believes that an attempt was made to administer a sedative without her consent," he said. "There is preliminary evidence supporting that claim." Vanessa let out a sharp breath. "This is unbelievable," she said. "You're just going to take her word for it." Daniel didn't look at her. "Not yet. We will be contacting a certified laboratory to confirm the substance," he continued, "and if necessary, law enforcement." That did it. The word law enforcement changed everything. Vanessa's control slipped. Not entirely, but enough. "This is ridiculous," she said again, louder now. "There is no proof." "There will be," Daniel replied calmly. Silence. Then Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the door, toward the hallway, an exit. For the first time, she looked uncertain, not calculating, not composed, uncertain. Michael saw it, and something inside him broke. "Vanessa," he said slowly. She didn't answer. She was thinking, fast, adjusting, but there was nowhere left to go. No version of this that ended cleanly for her anymore, and she knew it. I stepped forward, just one step. "You chose the wrong family," I said quietly. Her eyes snapped back to mine, and this time there was no smile, no mask, just something cold, something exposed. And in that moment, everyone in the room saw it. For a second, no one spoke. The room felt smaller than it had a moment ago, as if the walls themselves had drawn closer to contain what was happening inside. The soft music from the reception still drifted faintly through the hallway, but it sounded distant now, unimportant. All that mattered was the silence between us, and Vanessa standing at the center of it. Her face had changed, not dramatically, not in a way most people would notice at first glance, but the warmth was gone, the softness, the effortless charm. All of it had slipped away, leaving something far more controlled and far more dangerous. Michael saw it. I watched it happen in real time. The exact moment his mind stopped trying to protect the version of her he thought he knew and started recognizing the version standing in front of him now. "Vanessa," he said, his voice low, almost unsteady. "Just tell me the truth." She didn't answer. Not right away. Her eyes moved from him to me, to Daniel, and back again. Calculating, measuring, searching for an angle that no longer existed. "There's nothing to tell," she said finally. But her voice had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It wasn't warm. It was flat, controlled, and just slightly sharper than before. Michael took a step toward her. "That's not true," he said. She shook her head. "You're letting this get out of hand," she replied. "Your mother is confused." "I'm not confused." My voice cut through hers again, steady, certain. She didn't look at me this time. She kept her focus on Michael. "That's exactly what I mean," she said. "You're choosing to believe something that doesn't make sense." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then explain it," he said. "Explain what?" "The drink." She exhaled, almost impatient now. "I didn't do anything to that drink." Daniel stepped forward slightly. "Then you won't mind if we have it tested officially," he said. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him, then back to Michael. "This is insane," she said again. "You're going to drag police into your wedding day over this." Michael didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, looking at her, really looking at her. And for the first time, he didn't see the woman he fell in love with. He saw the gaps, the inconsistencies, the way she wasn't answering directly, the way she kept redirecting, the way she was trying to make this about anything except the truth. "Why were you in the kitchen earlier?" he asked suddenly. Vanessa blinked. "What Noah saw you," he continued. "He said you had a glass, that you put something in it." Her expression hardened. "He's 8 years old," she said. "He doesn't understand what he saw." "He understood enough to warn her," Michael replied. "That hit. You could see it. A small crack forming in her control. That's not evidence," she snapped. "No," Daniel said calmly, "but it supports a pattern." Vanessa turned to him sharply. "What pattern?" Daniel held her gaze. "We're aware of your previous marriage," he said. Silence. Not the heavy silence from before. This was sharper, more dangerous. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "David Parker," Daniel said. The name landed hard. Vanessa didn't move, didn't speak. But something in her eyes shifted. Recognition. Michael saw it. "Vanessa," he said. She looked at him quickly. "Don't," she said. "Don't what? Don't do this," she replied. "Not here, not like this." Michael took another step back. "What happened in Arizona?" he asked. Her lips pressed together. "You're really going to believe this?" she said, gesturing toward me. "I'm asking you," he said. Another pause. Longer. Then she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fine," she said. The word was quiet, but final. "You want to know?" she added. "Yes," Michael said. Vanessa straightened, slowly, as if shedding something invisible. The performance, the role, the mask. "David had problems," she said. "He wasn't stable." "That's not what the article said," I replied. Her eyes snapped to mine. "Articles don't tell the full story," she said sharply. "Then tell it," Michael said. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time there was no softness at all. "He couldn't handle pressure," she said. "He made mistakes, bad ones." "So you took control of his finances?" Michael asked. "I protected what was left," she replied. "And then you left," he pressed. She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. The silence said enough. Michael's face changed, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way that felt permanent. "You did the same thing here," he said quietly. Vanessa didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She just stood there, still, watching him. And that was enough. Why, he asked, one word, heavy, broken. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. Asking why now doesn't change anything, she said. Yes, it does, he replied. It changes everything. She studied him for a moment, then finally, she answered. Because it works, she said. The room seemed to shrink again. Because people trust what they see. She continued. A fall, confusion, age, it all fits. Michael stared at her. You were going to do that to my mother. It wasn't a question. No, she said calmly. I was going to help you. The words hit harder than anything else she had said. Help me, he repeated. Yes, she said. You've been carrying too much for too long. This would have simplified things. Michael let out a breath. Slow, unsteady. You were going to drug her. I was going to create an opportunity, she corrected. That was it. That was the moment. The last thread snapped. Michael stepped back. Not just physically, emotionally, completely. We're done, he said. Simple, clear, final. Vanessa didn't react. Not outwardly, but her eyes flickered again. This time, not with control, but with something closer to frustration. You don't mean that, she said. I do. You're throwing everything away over a misunderstanding. No, he said. I'm finally understanding. Silence. Daniel stepped forward again. I think it's time we involve the authorities, he said. Vanessa didn't argue. She didn't plead. She didn't explain. She simply stood there, looking at all of us. And for the first time, she had nothing left to control. No one moved for a few seconds after Michael said it. We're done. The words didn't echo loudly, but they settled into the room like something permanent, something that couldn't be taken back, reshaped, or softened. Vanessa stood perfectly still. If anyone from the outside had walked in at that moment, they might have thought she was calm, composed, even graceful. But I could see it now. Not fear, not regret, frustration. A plan interrupted, an outcome denied. Michael, on the other hand, looked like something inside him had collapsed quietly. Not dramatically, not in tears, but in the way his shoulders lowered, the way his eyes no longer searched for an explanation, the way his posture shifted from confusion into acceptance. Painful acceptance. I need you to leave, he said. His voice was steady now. Vanessa blinked. Once, slowly. This is still my wedding, she said. Michael shook his head. No, he replied. It isn't. Another pause. Then she exhaled. A long, controlled breath. You're making a mistake, she said. Michael didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. Daniel stepped forward slightly. We can handle this quietly, he said. Or we can involve the police right now. That choice is yours. Vanessa's gaze shifted to him, sharp, assessing, weighing risk, options, consequences. For a brief moment, I wondered if she would try to deny everything again, to spin it, to manipulate the situation one last time. But instead, she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not the warm, practiced smile from earlier, not the charming, perfect version everyone had admired. The smile was different, cool, detached, almost amused. You think this is over? She said quietly. No one answered, because none of us knew exactly what she meant. Then she turned to me. You're smarter than I expected, she added. I met her gaze. So are you, I said. A flicker of acknowledgement passed between us. No warmth, no connection, just recognition. Two people who understood exactly what the other had done and exactly what had been avoided. Vanessa nodded once. Then she reached up and slowly removed the small diamond earrings from her ears, one, then the other. She placed them gently on the table beside her, a symbolic gesture, as if she were shedding the role she had been playing all day. I won't make a scene, she said. Michael didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look at her. And that, more than anything else, seemed to affect her, not visibly but subtly, a fraction of a second where her expression shifted. Then it was gone. She walked toward the door. Daniel stepped aside, allowing her to pass, but he didn't take his eyes off her, not for a second. As she reached the doorway, she paused, not turning fully, just enough to speak over her shoulder. You should check your accounts, she said to me. The words were quiet, but deliberate. Then she left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that part of it was. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then Michael sat down heavily in the chair across from me. He didn't look at me right away. He just stared at the floor, processing, trying to rebuild something that had just been shattered. "I didn't see it," he said finally. His voice was low, rough. "I didn't see any of it." I stood and walked over to him. "You weren't supposed to," I said gently. He shook his head. She was perfect, I know. She said all the right things, did all the right things. That's how people like her work," Daniel said quietly. Michael looked up. "What do you mean?" Daniel stepped closer. "They study people," he explained. "They learn what to say, how to behave, how to gain trust." Michael swallowed. And then they use it." The words landed heavily. Michael leaned back slightly. "I brought her into our family," he said. "That's not your fault," I said. "But it is," he replied. "I didn't question anything. I didn't listen when something felt off." I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You loved her," I said. "That's not a weakness." He let out a slow breath. "Feels like one right now." Daniel glanced at his watch. "I'm going to step outside and make a few calls," he said. "We should still document everything properly." I nodded, "Thank you." He gave a small nod in return and left the room. Michael and I were alone now, for the first time since all of this began. He looked at me again. Really looked. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Because of Noah," I added. A faint expression crossed his face. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Because of Noah." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he let out a small, humorless laugh. "Of all the people in that room," he said, "an 8-year-old was the one who saw the truth." "Children notice things we don't," I said. "They don't filter the world the same way." He nodded. "I almost lost you today." The words hit deeper than anything else had. But I didn't respond immediately, because I knew what he meant. Not just physically, but in every way that mattered. "I'm still here," I said finally. He looked up at me. And for the first time since this began, there was something like relief in his eyes. Not complete, not yet, but real. Outside, the music had stopped. The reception was likely in confusion now. Guests whispering, wondering, trying to understand why the bride had disappeared. But none of that mattered anymore. Not really, because the truth had already been revealed, and the damage had been stopped. I squeezed his shoulder gently. "Let's go see Noah," I said. He nodded, and together we stood. When we stepped back onto the terrace, the celebration had unraveled into something uncertain. The music had stopped. The band stood quietly near the stage instruments lowered, exchanging confused glances. Guests clustered in small groups, whispering. Their eyes shifting toward the hallway we had just come from. The warm glow of the string lights still hung above us, but the atmosphere had changed completely. A wedding had turned into a question no one could answer. Michael paused beside me, taking it all in. "I should say something," he murmured. "Yes," I said gently. "You should." He nodded, though it took him a moment to move. Across the terrace, Noah spotted us immediately. He jumped up from his chair and ran toward us. "Grandma," I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him. "I'm here," I said softly. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling back to look at my face. "I'm okay," I assured him. Did she do something bad?" he whispered. I glanced at Michael. He crouched down beside us, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. "She made a very bad choice," he said carefully. Noah frowned. "Is she in trouble?" Michael hesitated. "She will be," he said. "But right now, what matters is that you helped us." Noah looked between us. "I just told the truth," he said. I smiled. And that's exactly what saved me. He didn't fully understand the weight of that, but one day he would. Michael stood and took a slow breath. "Stay here with Grandma," he told Noah. Noah nodded. Michael walked toward the center of the terrace where the microphone still stood. The conversations quieted almost immediately. People turned, watched, waited. He picked up the microphone. For a second he didn't speak. He just looked out at the guests, friends, colleagues, family people who had come to celebrate something that no longer existed. Then he began. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice carried clearly across the terrace. "This isn't how today was supposed to go." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. "There are things that happened tonight," he continued, "that I can't ignore." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The wedding is not going to continue." Gasps, whispers, shock spreading in waves, but he didn't stop. "I know that's confusing," he said, "and I know it's sudden, but it's the right decision." He lowered the microphone slightly, then added quieter this time, "But I'm grateful." That caught people off guard, because something important was revealed before it was too late. He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. Some things didn't belong in public, not like this. But his voice held enough certainty, enough finality, that no one questioned him. Not out loud. He placed the microphone back on the stand and stepped away. The crowd remained quiet for a moment. Then slowly people began to move. Some approached him. Others gathered their things. The evening dissolved into something softer. Not celebration, but understanding, acceptance. I watched him as he made his way back toward us. He looked tired, older somehow, but also clearer, like something had been stripped away, leaving only what mattered. "You okay?" I asked when he reached us. He nodded. "I will be." Noah slipped his hand into his. Dad Michael looked down at him. "Yeah, buddy. Are we still a family?" The question was simple, but it held everything. Michael crouched down again. "We're still a family," he said. "Nothing changes that." Noah nodded slowly, satisfied. I felt something in my chest loosen, not completely, but enough. We stood there together for a moment, 3 generations in the middle of a night that had almost gone very differently. Then Michael turned to me. "She said something before she left," I said. He frowned. "What?" "She told me to check my accounts." His expression hardened. "I will," he said. "We will," I corrected gently. He nodded. "Yes, we will." Because this wasn't over. Not entirely. There would be legal steps, investigations, conversations, but the most important part, the part that couldn't be undone, had already been avoided. I looked down at Noah. "You know, I said you were very brave today." He shrugged slightly. "I was just worried. That's what bravery looks like sometimes," I said. He smiled a little, then leaned into me. The terrace had begun to empty now. The lights still glowed. The ocean still stretched beyond the horizon. The world had not changed, but our lives had, in a quiet, irreversible way. Michael stood beside me, his arm resting lightly around Noah's shoulders. "I almost missed it," he said softly. "But you didn't," I replied. He nodded. "Because of him." We both looked at Noah. He didn't notice. He was watching the waves in the distance, peaceful, unaware of how close everything had come to breaking. I placed a gentle hand on his back. "You saved me," I said. He looked up at me, confused. "No, Grandma," he said simply. "I just told you not to drink it." I smiled. Sometimes that's all it takes. Stories like this remind us that danger doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes wrapped in kindness and charm, in perfect smiles and carefully chosen words. And sometimes the people we trust the most can be the ones we need to look at a little more closely. But there's something even more important than that. Truth has a way of finding its voice, even if it comes from the smallest person in the room. Noah didn't have proof. He didn't have certainty. He just had a feeling that something wasn't right, and he chose to speak up anyway. And that one moment of honesty changed everything. It protected a family. It exposed a lie. It stopped something that could have gone much further. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Have you ever ignored a small warning, something that didn't feel right at the time? Or have you ever listened to that instinct and realized later that it saved you? I'd really love to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, real emotional and filled with unexpected turns, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes the quietest voices carry the most important truths.